Hello everybody and welcome to yet another video in our Web Design Fundamentals course. So we're still going on with our CSS, and in here, this is the code just from the previous video, so I'm going to delete some of this that I don't want anymore. I will go ahead and add just a few more things down here. So maybe we're going to put a section down here, and then inside this section we're going to have a couple p tags, and I'm going to say p dot. And remember, if you use the dot annotation, that's going to allow you to assign the class name. So I'm going to say p dot paragraph, and then in here, I'm just going to say asterisk 3. And now inside of the top one, we can say lorem 15, and that'll give us just some generic text. And then the next one, we can say lorem 10. And then, I don't know, maybe at the last one, we can say lorem 18. Now we have all of this generic text in here, and I have classes on all of them. But what if I wanted to go ahead and assign a ID as well? We could do that. So at least for this top one, I'll say ID is equal to, and we could say para1, and then down here, I could say ID equals to para2, and then for the third one, ID is equal to para3. So now that we have all of that, if I were to come into my styles.css, if you remember in the index, in the HTML page, just like we can come down here and type p dot, and then it's going to give us a class name. So that gives us a p element with a class name. I can also type p hashtag, and then that's going to give me my ID. So ID equals ID name. There you go. Same thing in here. If we have these IDs in here, which again have to be unique to every element, so I can't have p para1, para1, para1. These have to be unique, so I have 1, 2, and 3. But if I save that and then come into my styles.css, now if in here I say, rather than dot, if I do a hashtag, which is going to be for my ID selector, I can say para1, and then inside of para1, I can give it some different attributes here. Let's just maybe give it some padding. And I'm going to say padding of maybe 10 pixels. And if you don't know what padding is, basically padding is going to be space around the text. So you can see that when I add that there, it gives me 10 pixels, kind of an indentation there, and then a little more space between the top and the bottom from the previous and the next line. So I can select by that. I can also select just by everything. So if I do asterisk, and then in here, let's just say I want to put a border around absolutely everything. We can say border, and then I can say 2 pixels. And then on that border, if it's 2 pixels, I can say I want it to be a solid line, and I want it to be blue. So now if I save that, we have borders around everything, and it's solid and blue. And notice here, if I put a border around everything, which is what the asterisk does, or the wildcard as we call it, this asterisk is selecting absolutely everything, and it's not putting one border around all of the elements combined. It's putting one border around every single element, which is why the header has a border, the next p tag has a border, the div has a border, and then all these p tags have borders, and then the entire thing has a border itself. So you can select with that as well, but I don't really want to do that. I'm just showing you that that's an option. So it may be more than doing everything. Another thing that you could do is you could do like, if I come back here and see, well, here's my section, I could say, well, if I want everything within section 1, so we're going to actually have to give this a class name. So I could say, class equals section 1. Now, if I come back into my styles and I can say dot section 1 asterisk, and then I can say color is equal to, I don't know, brown. So now if I save that, and then come back into the index HTML, because you see we have the white circle, save that one too, you can see all of the text in there changed to brown. So those are just a couple different selectors that we can use. But now moving on from that, if I come in here, if I right click inside of my Chrome or really any browser, and then I click View Page Source, you can see that this is actually our same HTML file that we have right here, with one important difference. And you'll see down here we have a script. And you might think, well, we haven't written a script, so where's this web page, where's this browser pulling that script from? And you're right, we haven't written a script, but we are using that live server plugin. And that live server plugin, it says right here, injected by live server. That plugin has actually generated and injected this script into our website so that we can use that plugin. So don't worry about what that script is doing or where it came from. Just know that that's what we need for the live server. But here you can see we actually have all of the code that's in our HTML file I can see in my browser. And then another cool thing that I'll show you is if we come back into here and right click on here and click inspect, or you can click F12. You can also click these dots up here and come down here and go to more tools and then developer tools. But in here in this inspect window, again, we have all the code. And if we hover over it, you can see if I hover over this top line, HTML lang equals English, the whole thing is highlighted. And then if I hover over the body, it's going to highlight just our body. If I hover over H1, it'll highlight just the H1, and then just the P, and then just my div. And if I open up this div, it'll highlight each one of these individually. So I can actually just mouse over whatever piece of my code I want to see, and it will highlight it for me within the Chrome browser window, which is pretty cool. And I can actually make changes in here as well. So if I right click on this and I say edit as HTML, I can come in here and maybe instead of test.com, we want google.com. We can delete this text and put Google, and we should actually see that showing up in our browser right here. You can see now it's test, test, test Google instead of test, 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 test like we have in our code. Now, of course, this is only a temporary change, and this is like if I want to change things quickly, this is one way that I can do that. So if, for example, I were to reload this page, that Google change that we made is now gone because it was only saved within the browser itself. But really, I can come down here and change a whole bunch of stuff. So if I click on maybe my header, for example, I can see it's going to show me down below. It'll show me the CSS styles that we're actually applying if you're on this styles tab here. And I can look in here and I can see, oh, that's green. Well, let's say I want to see how this might look if I had a different color in there. So I can slide this around and I can change that color on the website while we have it loaded. And I can set that to be whatever I want it to be in here. And again, this is a temporary change. So if I were to reload this website, it's going to reset it back to what's in our actual CSS and HTML files. But I can actually do this not just on my own website that I have the code for, but if I go to any website, like maybe W3 Schools, for example, let's go to, here's my W3 Schools website. And if I click on here and say inspect, now if I hover over all of these different elements in their HTML code, I can actually see kind of how they've styled everything here too. So let's just click on this class. And then if I come down here and look at the different colors, we can see here this WS black, we have the color for the text is going to be white and not important. So we can change that to really whatever we want live on their site. So it starts at white and I can change that to red. I can change it to green just to demo how this would look. And I can do this, like I said, this is not my website. I can do this with any website as long as they don't have it locked down, which some websites do. But this is definitely a good way to get online and demo, and you can learn like, okay, if I change this CSS style, if I add this HTML block, how is this going to change the overall structure of this website? And I can demo that on live websites without having to worry about writing all the code myself. And then also, so we have that set to green. If I say, if I want to maybe add some margin or something to this, Here, you can see we're on the Styles tab. So this is going to have all of our CSS code down here. But if I change to my computed, well, now, if I go back to that same section, and in here, I have my, you can see this is the actual section dimensions. And then on top of that, it looks like I have 90 on the top and bottom. I have 90 pixels of padding, and then I have no border and I have no margin. But what would it look like if I had a border and a margin? Well, we can check that. All we have to do is add one. So now you can see this has added this border top width of 1 pixel, but that's not actually a full border. We haven't talked about borders yet, so don't worry about that. I'll just type in border : and we'll say 4 pixels, and we want this to be red so that we can see it, and we want it to be, a solid line and then red so we can see it. And then after that, we'll put a semicolon, margin, colon, and maybe 20 pixels of margin all the way around so that we can see what that looks like as well. If I now hit enter on that, you can see on their site, I have now this border here, and it will show me if I hover down in this box, it'll show me exactly where my border is, and it's this 4 pixels. That's orange when I hover on it, but red when I don't. And then my padding for this is going to be those 2 green boxes on the top and then on the bottom. And you'll notice we don't have any padding on the sides here. And then my margin around this element is going to be this 20 pixels all the way around. So that's how you can just quickly and easily make changes to a live website and see how it would look. And this is particularly useful when you're troubleshooting or wanting to just test really quick things on your website. But also you can learn a lot just by looking at the code and the HTML and the JavaScript and the CSS that you see on other people's websites. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and we'll see you in the next video as we continue our journey of learning CSS.